Good evening, students. Welcome to CET 2026 Day 1 Slot 2 analysis. And sorry for being late. Actually, whatever that could go wrong today went wrong with me. Because first of all, my exam center was some 35 kilometers away from my place. And as I was on my way back home, uh, there was a tire puncture of my Uber. So, I had to order another one and things like that. So because of that, I'm a little late. Anyway, so let's get started. So as usual, this test was divided into 4 sections. There was no change in the pattern as such. So logical reasoning, total 75 questions. Abstract reasoning, that is 25 questions. QADI, 50 questions, and VARC also 50 questions. And as usual, no negative marking for incorrect answers. So overall, what we are saying is that LOD of slot 2 of day 1 was easy to medium. So which is pretty similar to what we had in slot 1 of day 1. So this is the overall analysis that we are looking at. So quantitative aptitude, easy to moderate, level of difficulty. Logical reasoning, somewhat moderate. Verbal ability and reading comprehension, again moderate. And abstract reasoning, easy. So overall, easy to moderate is the level of difficulty. And good at times, as we are saying, about 150 to 160. So in case we are aiming at JBIMS, then definitely something like 160 or more attempts would have been needed. So these are the, and then before I begin with the breakup of individual sections, one good thing that I definitely want to highlight about today's slot 2 is that there were no mistakes as such, no reported mistakes, because last year's CET was full of mistakes. So thankfully they have taken care of not ensuring the repetition of the same. So it's good in a way. Now moving on to QADI section. So first of all, there were 10 DI questions spread across 2 sets. So each DI set had 5 questions each, and one set was on bar graph and the other set was on pie chart. And both the sets had easy, simple calculations. Then this out of this 50 questions, uh, 40 were on the mathematics part and 10 were on data interpretation. Out of those 40, as many as 26 were on arithmetic. So this one topic more or less dominated the entire QA. 26 questions out of 40. Then 5 questions on numbers, 2 questions on algebra, 3 questions on geometry, and 3 questions on modern maths. And there was also 1 question on completion of number series. So that makes it to a total of 50 questions. The overall LOD was easy to medium. So nothing was very fancy and very difficult in this section. Now, moving on to LR section. Out of 75 questions in LR, 12 questions were on verbal reasoning and 63 questions were on non-verbal reasoning. So in the verbal reasoning, there were questions like odd one out, arrange the words in sequence, syllogism, and things like that. So that adds to 12 questions. And in non-verbal reasoning, there were questions on LR, Kessler, sequential output, coding, decoding, directions, family tree, so pretty much everything that you can think of that falls under logical reasoning, non-verbal logical reasoning were asked. Now, one peculiar feature about this section is that there was not a single set in day 1 slot 2. All questions were standalone questions. So when we say there were 5 questions on sequential output, so it's not that there was a set of 5 questions. All the 5 questions were standalone questions. So this is something, uh, a striking feature of today's test. So these are this is a breakup of questions. So linear arrangement, 8 questions. So there were proper logical reasoning type linear arrangement questions, as well as there were questions like, say, a certain number of people are standing in a row. And say some 10 people are to the left of one person and 8 people are to the right of another person. And so what could be the total number of people in the row and things like that. So with these two type of questions, uh, there were total 8 questions on linear arrangements. Then there was 5 questions on sequential output, as I said. Then 5 questions on alphanumerical series. So there were questions like, say, if say symbols are taken out from that alphanumerical series, then which what will be the character which is, say, fifth from the right of the 10th from the left, something of those lines. Then there were 5 questions on directions, 5 questions on coding decoding, 7 questions on completion of series, 5 questions on family tree. Now, when it comes to questions on completion of series, so there were questions on numbers, there were questions on letters, as well as a combination of both. Now, one feature about these questions, as well as there were some couple of questions on analogies. So one feature of these questions is that it was like hit and go. So if you could get the logic, then you can get it in like 5 seconds. Otherwise, it will take a very long time. So the right approach would be to see if you get the logic in, say, really quickly. And if you can get the logic quickly, just mark it and then move ahead. But definitely you don't want to spend long time on an individual question. Then there were 4 questions on odd one out. There were 3 questions on missing numbers in grid, 2 questions on analogies, as I said. Then there were 2 questions on symbol-based BODMAS. So what I mean by that is, say, suppose multiplication sign actually represents division sign, and plus sign represents minus sign. And then BODMAS type of operation is given, and then what is the output of that? Then there were 5 questions on Venn diagrams. So what I mean by that is, say, 3 questions out of 5 were proper mathematics type Venn diagram questions. So there were questions involving 2 variables, there were questions involving 3 variables. And the remaining 2 questions were on figure-based Venn diagram. So it's like intersection of triangle and rectangle and then square, and then what is the number which lies in the intersection of say a couple of areas and things like that. Then there was one question on quantitative comparison. Then there was one question on data sufficiency with 3 statements. And then there were 5 questions on miscellaneous. So these adds up to 63 questions on non-verbal reasoning. And as I said, there were 12 questions on verbal reasoning. So what were they? There were 2. Then prior to that, this abstract reasoning or visual reasoning. So out of 25 questions, so the overall LOD of abstract reasoning section was easy. There were 2 questions on series completion, and there were 3 questions on water image. So one diagram is given, and then what is the water image of that diagram. Then there were 6 questions on counting the number of triangles, number of squares, number of rectangles, and things like that. Then there were 12 questions on analogies. There was 1 question on paper folding. So 6 squares are given, and if you were to fold them to form a cube, then which character would be the opposite to the face of, say, some face that is carrying one other character? So that type of question. And then there was one miscellaneous question. So one diagram was given, and then the question was how many straight lines or how many line segments you will have to draw, minimum number of line segments you will have to draw in order to construct the diagram. So we are saying that is a miscellaneous. So that adds up to 25 questions. And then verbal reasoning and reading comprehension. So there were 30 questions on vocabulary and grammar and 20 questions on reading comprehension. So total 4 passages and 5 questions per passage. Yeah, the length of each passage was about 400 to 500 words. Then when it comes to verbal reasoning, the verbal ability questions, uh, there were questions like say idioms and phrases meaning, then there were questions on fill in the blanks, antonym synonyms, then spot the error, identify grammatically correct sentence, and then there were of course parajumbles and word usage. So that adds up to total 30 questions. So that's it for now from my side. So what we are looking at is if you are aiming at JBIMS, then an attempt of at least say about 160 or more was needed because overall LOD of this test was on easier side. Okay, so that's it from my side now. All the very best.